Hello again. I'm Earl Debath, conch economist, and I'm here with an unusual report kind of midweek because of breaking developments here on the economic scene. I'm sure all of you have heard by now about the CPI report, and I'm going to read that just to refresh our memory here. This is the real concern. Over the last 12 months, the all items index increased 2.9% before a seasonally adjusted basis. Folks, this is a long way from 2% goal. We are at 2.9%. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon your point of view, there's a lot of speculation that the interest rates are going to be lowered, or at least the federal funds rates are going to be lowered next week when the Fed meets, because not so much of the inflation would argue against that, but because of mounting concerns about the labor market. So the Fed is in a dilemma. We've got prices that are high and the labor market, which is not looking as well as they would like. It's almost the formula for what is called stagflation, when you have a high unemployment and low economic growth. One of the items that has concerned me, and one reason that prompted my decision to make a quick report to you today, the index for shelter rose 0.4% in August and was the largest factor of all the items in the monthly increase. Now, 0.4%, folks, that on an annual basis is nearly 5%. This is shelter, this is housing. And one of the reasons that people are excited about maybe the possibility of lower interest rates is that this will help housing. People trying to buy a house at the current high prices, the lower interest rates may help. And indeed they may, and I hope they do. But I'm concerned that we are maybe in for a disappointment. One of the reasons that I'm concerned about the possibility of lower interest rates is because I'm not sure that the consumer price index, as we measure it, really fully reflects the increase in the cost of housing over recent years. I've got on the screen here a chart that I've used before in one of my earlier programs, but it'll help us very much understand my concern here. Let's look at the year 2000. The consumer price index in December of that year was at 174. The median price of a home in the fourth quarter of that year was $172,900. Now keep in mind that housing, or the shelter, is 35% of the consumer price index. So there's, of course, medical care, and there's food, and there's travel, and there's insurance and recreation. There's all the different categories of consumer expenditures in the CPI. But by far and away, the largest one is housing, 35%. So this housing component here, $172,900, that would be reflected here in part in the CPI of 2000 there, with 1982, 82, 84 being the base of 100 at 174. Now let's look 24 years later. The CPI is now 315.6. And over that period of time, the CPI has increased by over 84%. But look what's happened to the median home price. It's gone from $172,900 to $416,300, an increase of over 140%. Now, folks, if housing is supposed to be part of the CPI, which went up 84%, and the median price of houses went up 140%, what are we missing? Obviously, the price of housing is going up much faster than the overall CPI. Did other things in the CPI go down in value so we could keep the CPI at 315? Well, as you well know, educational expenses have certainly gone up. Medical care has gone up. Food has gone up. No, things didn't go down. What I'm worried about, and I'm not alone on this, other economists have expressed the same concern. Does the CPI really fully measure the extent of inflation? And I'm afraid that our CPI, as we calculate it, under the current methodology, that it doesn't fully reflect that. And one of the reasons I would suggest that is because of, look at the lopsided relationship between the increase in home prices and the increase in the CPI. So, bottom line here, we may not be fully aware of just how bad the CPI is. Of course, I think when we go to the grocery store or other places, we begin to realize that the inflation is very much a part of our life. Another reason I'm concerned about the euphoria over lower interest rates and what they might do for housing is that the lowering of interest rates will help some, but it certainly won't solve all the problems. And I've got a chart here which I've used before showing that the real benefit, if there is any, that can come for housing is for the housing prices to go down or not go up as much. And I'm starting here with a hypothetical example. Let's assume a $400,000 house. And we're going to look at two different things here. What if we lower the interest rates by 10%? Or what if we lower the price of houses by 10%? Lower the interest rates by 10% or the housing by 10%. And which would have the greatest impact on the monthly mortgage, assuming principal and interest payment? We'll start here with a $400,000 house. A 20% down payment gives you an 80% loan of $320,000. Now a 30-year mortgage at 6.7%, the monthly P&I would be $2,064.72. So this is what we're going to be trying to lower. What can we do to lower this $2,064 a month monthly payment? Well, if we would lower the interest rate from 6.7% to 6.03, this would be a 10% drop in the interest rate. This would, of course, lower the monthly P&I to 1924.54, which is a reduction, to be sure, of just a little over 93%. In other words, if we compare the price of the monthly payment of 1924 against 2064, that is a decline there of just a little over 93%. That would be good. But what would happen if we would instead lower the cost of the home by 10%? All right, lowering the cost of the home down to 360 gives us an 80% mortgage of $288,000. At the same interest rate, 6.7%, our monthly payment is now $1,853. And of course, if we would get an additional 10% drop in mortgage, it would go even lower at $1,732. But remember, what we're trying to do is lower the original payment here on a $400,000 house, 20% down. What can we do to lower the monthly payment at $264? Well, by lowering the interest rate by 10%, we did drop the monthly payment to $1,924, which was a drop of 93%. But if we still have the same 6.7% rate of interest, but we have now lowered the price of the house, the monthly payment now is $1,858. And that $1,858 is 90% of our original mortgage. So you can see there is a slight benefit to lowering the cost of the house as opposed to lowering the interest rate on the loan. Don't get me wrong, both would be a big help, but I want to point out that we need to be overly cautious as to how much benefit we're going to expect some type of a drop in interest rates. Interest rates, the last I checked, are still in the 6% range, around 6.5 or so. They have come down recently in anticipation of maybe what the Fed might do next week. Well, that's it for today. I wanted to get something quick off to you to put things in perspective. Hopefully we will have some interest rate reductions, and hopefully they will produce lower mortgage rates, and hopefully this will help some people to buy homes that have otherwise not been able to do so. But the real solution here is to go after the problem of attacking the high prices of houses, which is a result of a lot of things: building materials and local regulations which restrict where houses can be built, and other requirements. So there's a lot to do here to go after the price of houses that have gone up so much in the recent years. Again, as a result of previous reports that I've had to you, the inflation fires have been fanned by an unbelievable increase in the money supply. And we'll be having more discussions about this in the future. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.